The first night in the house that had cost me my 20s, my sleep, and my soul. I was standing in my kitchen, staring at the moonlight dancing on the Pacific, when the phone vibrated on the cold Calacatta marble with a violence that made my skin crawl. I picked it up, and Julian's voice came through like a jagged blade, slicing through the silence I had paid $2.8 million to own. "We're coming, Elena. The whole crew. 20 people, 2 weeks. Be ready by Sunday." He didn't ask. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask if I was settled or if I was exhausted from the move. He just placed an order, his tone thick with the kind of casual entitlement that only a man who has never worked for anything can possess. He sounded like a traveler calling a concierge, except I wasn't his staff. I was the sister he hadn't called in 6 months. I stood there, the phone pressed to my ear, watching a light breeze stir the sheer curtains of my living room. I didn't say a word. I stayed perfectly, dangerously quiet. Julian took my silence as a green light, his ego too big to recognize the cliff he was about to walk off. "It's going to be epic," he chuckled, already moving on to his own excitement. "The kids have their swimsuits packed. See ya Sunday." He hung up. I looked at the clock on the wall. 9:26 p.m. The house was a masterpiece of glass and cedar, smelling of fresh polish and the salty tang of the sea. It was empty, a sanctuary I'd spent a decade building while Julian was out spending our parents' inheritance and laughing at my little tech project. My heart wasn't racing with fear. It was cold with a sudden, crystalline clarity. Something was about to change. I wasn't that girl in the Queen's studio apartment anymore, and Julian was about to learn that silence doesn't mean permission. It means I'm calculating the cost of your exit. To understand why I was ready to go to war, you have to understand the decade of blood and grit that led to that 9:26 p.m. phone call. For 10 years, my life was a blur of fluorescent lights and caffeine jitters. I lived in a 400-square-foot box in New York where the radiator hissed like a dying animal, and the only view was a brick wall. While Julian was taking soul-searching trips to Bali on our father's dime, I was eating frozen Walmart burritos over a glowing keyboard, building a software architecture that everyone told me was a pipe dream. Julian used to call me just to mock the struggle. "Still playing with your code, El? You should just come home and work for Dad's firm. Why live like a rat?" He never saw the 80-hour weeks. He never saw the nights I cried from pure exhaustion, wondering if the venture capitalists would ever see the vision I had. He didn't see the cheap Target furniture I assembled myself or the way I'd skip meals to pay my server costs. To him, my eventual success wasn't the result of labor. It was luck. When I finally sold my company last year for a figure that made the national news, Julian's tone shifted from mockery to a predatory kind of closeness. Suddenly, I was his favorite sister. Suddenly, he was interested in wealth management. And when I closed on Azure Crest, this $2.8 million slice of heaven by the sea, he saw it not as my achievement, but as a family asset he was entitled to liquidate for his own pleasure. The next morning, the assault began in earnest. My phone exploded at 7 a.m. It was Julian again, but this time his wife Claire was on the line, her voice a high-pitched trill of artificial excitement. "Elena. Oh my God, the photos you posted of the deck. To die for. We've already told the cousins and the Miller family. We're all caravanning down. The kids are obsessed with the idea of a pool party. We'll need the guest suite with the ocean view, obviously." I felt a phantom weight on my chest. "Who gave you permission to invite the Millers, Claire?" asked my voice low. She laughed it off like I'd told a joke. "Oh, don't be silly. What are you going to do all alone in that massive fortress? You bought it for the family, didn't you? It's not like you have a husband or kids to fill it up. We're doing you a favor by bringing some life into the place." Favors. That was their favorite word. They were doing me a favor by invading my privacy, using my utilities, and treating my home like a free sandals resort. By noon, the Azure Crest Takeover group chat had been created. My phone buzzed every 30 seconds. "Cousin Mike. Is there a grill? I'm bringing 40 pounds of steak. Aunt Sarah. Hope the guest rooms have high thread count sheets, my back is sensitive." Random friend. When does the pool boy come? LOL. I sat on my deck, watching the waves crash against the rocks below. I didn't reply to the chat. I didn't send a single emoji. I watched them plan their menus, assign bedrooms I hadn't even finished furnishing, and argue over who got the parking spots. Felt steady. I felt like a general watching an enemy army march into a canyon. Friday evening, Julian showed up early to scout the location. He didn't knock. He just walked through the unlocked front door while I was on a conference call. He strode into the living room, his boots tracking sand across my custom silk rug, and flopped onto the white linen sofa. Nice place, El. A little minimalist, but we'll fix that when the kids get here, he said, propping his feet up on the marble coffee table. He looked around like he was checking the inventory of a hotel he'd already paid for. I think we'll put the kids in this wing. This room here, the one with the big desk, that'll be the playroom. I hung up my call and stood in the doorway. That's my office, Julian. I still work. He let out a bark of a laugh. Work? You're a billionaire, Elena. Stop pretending. You're retired. For the next 2 weeks, this is the playroom. Don't be a buzzkill. Claire wandered in from the kitchen, opening my cabinets and making a face. We're going to need to do a massive Costco run. You have nothing but expensive sparkling water and kale. The boys need real food. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I just picked up my glass of water and said, I'm thinking about the logistics. Good, Julian said, standing up and slapping the wall. Because we're all arriving Sunday at 1 p.m. Make sure the gate code is set to something easy, like 1-2-3-4. When the door finally closed behind them, I didn't cry. I went straight to my office, the room Julian wanted to turn into a sticky-floored playroom, and opened my laptop. It was 9:26 p.m. The first thing I did was call my attorney. Azure Crest wasn't just a house. It was a legal entity. I had purchased it through an LLC for privacy and tax reasons. I sent a quick, precise email to the property management firm that oversaw our gated community. Azure Crest sat within the Palisades, an ultra-exclusive enclave with rules that were notoriously rigid. The HO was a nightmare for most, but tonight they were my elite guard. I pulled up the bylaws. Rule 14.2. No more than 6 non-resident guests permitted per property without prior board approval. Rule 14.5. All guests must be registered with security 48 hours in advance. Unregistered vehicles will be towed at the owner's expense. Smiled. It was a cold, sharp expression. I logged into the owner's portal and updated my guest list. I added one name. Julian Sterling. Just one. Next, I emailed the head of security for the community. I was one of their highest-paying residents, and I had cultivated a very good relationship with the manager, a no-nonsense man named Silas. Silas, I wrote. I'm expecting a large number of unauthorized individuals to attempt entry this Sunday around 1 p.m. They will likely be aggressive and claim to be family. I have not authorized any guests other than the one name on my portal. Please enforce the HOA guest limits and parking regulations strictly. No exceptions. If they cause a disturbance, please involve local law enforcement immediately. I spent the rest of Saturday in a state of zen-like calm. I went to Costco, but I didn't buy 40 pounds of steak. I bought the finest ribeye, the freshest seafood, and a bottle of vintage Cristal that cost more than Julian's monthly mortgage. I filled my fridge with things I liked. I closed the motorized pool cover and locked the outdoor kitchen. I moved my car into the deep corner of the garage and left the rest of the driveway empty, a pristine expanse of gray pavers. Sunday arrived with a heat that shimmered off the asphalt. At 1 p.m. I was standing in my kitchen, wearing a silk robe, sipping a perfectly brewed espresso. The house was silent. The only sound was the rhythmic thud of the ocean. Then the first tremor. My phone vibrated. It was Julian. I let it ring for 3 cycles before I picked up. Elena. The guy at the gate is being an absolute prick. Julian's voice was already at a 10. I could hear the sound of car horns honking in the background and the muffled screams of children. He says we aren't on the list. Tell this rent-a-cop to open the damn gate. I took a slow sip of my coffee. Are you on the list, Julian? What kind of question is that? There are 6 cars back here. Claire is in the SUV behind me, the Millers are behind her. We're blocking traffic. Just give him the code. I don't have a code, Julian, I said, my voice as smooth as glass. The Palisades uses a biometric and guest verification system, and I only put one name on that list. Yours. There was a long, stunned silence. Then the explosion. One name. What the hell are you talking about? There are 20 of us. It's a family vacation. No, Julian, I said. It's my house. And according to the HOA rules I signed, I'm only allowed 6 guests. But since you didn't ask me before inviting an entire village, I decided to simplify things. I'm not hosting a circus this week. I'm hosting myself. Are you kidding me? He roared. I could hear him slamming his hand against his steering wheel. We drove 6 hours. The kids are in the back of the car in 90-degree heat. Open this gate right now, Elena, or I swear to God. Or what, Julian? You'll stop speaking to me. You'll tell Dad. Go ahead. But Silas is standing right there and he has my explicit instructions. If you don't turn those cars around in the next 5 minutes, he's going to call the sheriff for trespassing and blocking an emergency access route. I could hear Claire screaming in the background now. Tell that bitch to open the gate. I have 3 bags of groceries melting in the trunk. There's a Hilton about 20 miles back, I suggested. I hear they have a lovely pool. Though it might be a bit crowded for 20 people. Hung up. The next hour was a symphony of digital rage. The group chat became a toxic wasteland. Aunt Sarah. I have never been so insulted in my life. You are a cold, heartless woman. Cousin Mike. We're sitting on the side of the road like refugees. Do you have any idea how much we spent on gas? Julian. You've officially disowned yourself. Don't ever call us when you're rotting alone in that mausoleum. I didn't reply. I exited the group chat, deleted it, and blocked every single person on the list except Julian. I wanted him to be able to reach me for the final act. Around 4 p.m., Silas called from the front gate. Ms. Sterling. The caravan has dispersed. However, your brother is still here. He's on foot now. He's demanding to speak with you. He's on the authorized list, so I have to let him through unless you revoke it. Let him in, Silas, I said. I'm ready. 10 minutes later, I heard the roar of Julian's engine. He didn't just drive up the driveway. He drifted into the pavers, leaving black skid marks on the stone. He jumped out of the car, his face a shade of purple I'd never seen before. He didn't even wait for me to open the door. He started pounding on the glass. I opened it slowly, leaning against the frame. You're tracking rubber on my driveway, Julian. He shoved his way past me, his chest heaving. You humiliated me. You made me look like a fool in front of my in-laws. In front of my children. Do you have any idea what you've done? I drew a boundary, I said, closing the door and locking it with a soft click. Something you should have learned 10 years ago. He spun around, his hands shaking. It was 2 weeks. We just wanted to use the pool. You have all this money, all this space, and you're so incredibly selfish that you'd rather see your own nephews cry in a hot car than let us stay in your empty rooms. They aren't empty rooms, Julian. They're my rooms. Paid for them. I earned them while you were calling me a rat and a hobbyist. You didn't want to visit me. You wanted to use me. You wanted a free vacation at a 5-star resort, and you thought you could bully me into it because we share a last name. You're going to be alone, he hissed, stepping into my space, trying to use his height to intimidate me. Mom and Dad are going to hear about this. The whole family is going to know exactly who you are. You're a monster. If being a monster means I don't have to host 20 uninvited people who don't respect my home, then I'll wear the crown, I said, looking him dead in the eye. Now get out of my house. I'm not going anywhere. Julian, look at the clock. I pointed to the wall. 9:26 p.m. Exactly 48 hours ago, you told me you were coming here without asking. Now I'm telling you to leave. If you aren't out of that door in 60 seconds, I'm pressing the panic button on my security system. Silas and the sheriff are already on high alert. Do you really want to be escorted out of the Palisades in handcuffs? He stared at me, and for the first time in his life, he saw that I wasn't the little sister anymore. I was the woman who had built a billion-dollar company from nothing. I was the woman who owned the ground he was standing on. He spat on the floor, right on the silk rug, and turned for the door. You're dead to us, Elena. Enjoy your big, empty house. I will, I said as he slammed the door so hard the glass vibrated. I watched from the balcony as his headlights disappeared down the winding coastal road. The silence returned, deeper and more profound than before. I walked back to the rug, picked up a damp cloth, and meticulously cleaned the spot where he'd spit. I didn't feel sad. Felt light. The fallout was predictable. By Monday morning, Julian had posted a massive rambling essay on Facebook about wealth-changing people, and how blood isn't always thicker than water. My mother called me 3 times, crying, asking why I couldn't just be the bigger person. I am the bigger person, Mom, I told her. I'm the person who owns the house. And in my house, respect is the currency. Julian is broke. I didn't defend myself on social media. I didn't engage in the comments. I sent a massive gift basket to the security team at the gate and a formal letter of apology to the HOA board for the disturbance, along with a donation to their landscaping fund. A week passed. The group chat was a distant memory. I sat on my balcony every morning, drinking my coffee and listening to the gulls. I set up my office, my actual office, not a playroom, and I worked. I felt a level of productivity I hadn't felt in years because the family tax had finally been abolished. 2 weeks later, I got a text from Julian. Hotel bill was $4,000. Since you blocked everyone's vacation, the least you can do is Venmo me for the rooms. Dad thinks it's fair. I looked at the message, then looked at the sunset over the water. It was 9:26 p.m. I didn't reply. I didn't block him this time. I wanted him to see the read receipt. I wanted him to know I saw the request and chose to ignore it. I put my phone face down on the marble counter, walked out to the pool, and dove into the cool, dark water. I swam laps until my muscles ached and my mind was clear. When I climbed out, the house was glowing like a jewel against the night sky. I learned something that night at 9:26. Silence isn't just the absence of noise. It's a weapon. It's a shield. And when you pair it with a law and a backbone of steel, it's the most powerful thing in the world. I still live in Azure Crest today. No one comes through that gate without an invitation. And surprisingly, the only people who still try to get in are the ones who finally learned how to say, please. Julian hasn't called in months. I hear he's telling everyone I'm a recluse. I prefer the term curator. I curate my life, my peace, and my guest list. And as the moon rises over the Pacific, I realize I wouldn't trade this empty house for anything in the world.